PeterValley, FBAmaster.com here. You guys, I have sold some weird books in my time. This is definitely one of the weirder ones. I sold the Anarchist Cookbook. It's a book called the Anarchist Cookbook. It's literally a how-to guide on a whole slew of illegal activity, and I sold it for $150. Now, this video is not about this book, although it just makes the story slightly more interesting. This video is actually about tips on how to source from used bookstores, which is a hugely overlooked book source. So I'm only going to spend a couple seconds talking about the actual book, and this is more about how you can actually profit by going to your local bookstore. So the Anarchist Cookbook, like it sounds, whole bunch. It tells you how to do everything illegal you can imagine, from getting free phone calls to making bombs and everything else. Now, here's the deal. I'm not going to go into a whole political discussion about whether it's ethical or whatever to sell this book, or philosophical discussion. I'm probably on the extreme end of, I think information deserves to be free. I'm somebody who literally is anti-alcohol. Like, I don't drink alcohol, and I despise it. I have still sold books on how to make crystal meth in your kitchen. Okay, so I have no ethical quandaries about selling this book. This is not actually a fringe title. I think very few people that have read the Anarchist Cookbook are actually anarchists. I know being a teenager in the 90s, like, it was always like mythical, like kind of pre-internet as we know it. So people will like whisper like, "Oh, have you like this Anarchist Cookbook? Like, has anyone heard of it?" Like, there's rumors of people that have seen it. You didn't know where to get it. It's actually sold a lot of copies, 2 million copies. So it's not really a fringe title. I just happened to find an earlier edition that was worth significantly more money than the current edition. So you can see there's a lot of drama around this book. Again, it's not really about this book, but what we're really here to talk about is lessons on how to source from used bookstore. This has its own Wikipedia page. Okay, so, and you can see, I just think this is interesting, so I'm just kind of thumbing through these. This is an actual, if I said what's on this page right now, the Google algorithm, the YouTube algorithm would demote this video. What you're looking at here is a recipe on how to make a 4-letter word that starts with a B. Okay. Probably not even allowed to post on YouTube. This book was published in the 70s, so that's the context. How to make booby traps. Okay, so anyway, sold it for $150. Now, actually, let's just do a brief interlude, and let me just show you the sale. So Anarchist Cookbook, you can see here, the ASIN, blah, 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 sold for $149. Now, let's click over and take a look at the actual product page for the book. I'm actually curious. So I sold this. It's been like 3 weeks at this point. So actually fascinating. The price has gone way up. The buy box price, at least, $255. So when I listed this book, I think the merch fulfilled prices, let's see what they are now. Yeah, so they were roughly around here. So they're roughly around $100, $110. I listed mine for $150, right? So at $40 FBA premium, which is pretty decent. And if I had actually held out, I could have potentially gotten a $250 sale. And again, you look at this title. I mean, it's got 4,000 ratings. This is sold, again, 2 million. I don't know about this edition has sold 2 million, but this is sold, at least of this edition, sold hundreds of thousands of copies. So you can see the average rank down here for the last year, 1.6 million. For the last 90 days, 1 million. So yeah, 1.6 million. So, you know, again, a lot of Amazon sellers would have shied away from this. They would have been like, all right, I'm paying $30 for this book. The FBA premium's $40, which again, you don't need to do that. You could have just priced however you want, but and its average ranks 1.6 million. I don't want to pay $30 for a book ranked 1.6 million, but I saw the opportunity, I took it. And kind of a funny story, just a side note, I actually sold this in acceptable condition. I literally, as I was listing it, I was going to list it as very good. As I was listing it, I dropped it and I went to grab it and I ripped the cover clean off. I didn't tear the cover, I ripped it clean off. So I actually had to tape it back together, which a lot of sellers would just toss the book at that point. I taped it back together, put in the condition notes, hey, the cover has been retaped, like, sorry, acceptable condition, and someone bought it. So there you go. So are there lessons to be learned here? I would argue very much so, and that's what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about bookstores, used bookstores, and what an awesome source they are. So the first lesson here is that used bookstores are a fantastic source. Now, you're probably thinking, well, how can that be? It's kind of counterintuitive. It's like, if there's anyone on earth that would know what a book is, quote, worth, it's going to be a used bookstore, someone that specializes in books. Why would they be selling books for less than what they're worth? We're going to get that in a second, but you got to clear this hurdle in your head that used bookstores are one of the best sources if you have a little bit of money to spend. You're not going to pay $1 or $2 for books usually, but if you have capital to invest, they're probably one of the top sources, if not the top source, if you know what you're doing. Okay, so lesson number 2, and this is why I was able to sell this book for so much. Prices for long tail books fluctuate a lot. Now, I didn't even mention this. I purchased the Anarchist Cookbook for $30 and I sold it for $150. That's a pretty good return on my investment. Now, I don't know if the bookstore I sourced from ever even looked up their inventory on Amazon to see what it's worth on Amazon. A lot of bookstore owners don't even think Amazon is like a legitimate arbiter of value, which I actually respect. So I don't know why it was priced at $30, but the point is prices go up and down quite dramatically, especially with long tail books, right? So books that don't have a buyer coming along that often. You've got sellers coming along and they're like, hey, this book hasn't sold for, it's ranked like 3 million. I'm going to cut the price in half. And then that offer sells sometimes immediately. And then the price goes way up because, you've got repricers set to like, it's just, it gets really, really wild when you look at the price fluctuations of long tail books. So when I'm sourcing at used bookstores, I'm looking for those kind of fringe niche titles, because the gap between what the bookstore thinks it's worth or what it was worth at the time they put it on the shelf, at least on Amazon, and what it's selling for now, that could be the difference could be huge. And that's where we capitalize. Okay. So you have to understand that kind of lesson there. And then number three, which number two segues perfectly into this, which is that bookstore prices may reflect Amazon prices from years ago, if they reflect Amazon prices at all. So you go to a used bookstore and you're probably rightfully thinking, okay, so this bookstore owner probably looked up their books on Amazon and priced accordingly. First of all, that may or may not be the case. As I mentioned, a lot of bookstore owners reject Amazon's authority completely when it comes to all things and don't even look up their titles on Amazon. So, and which I completely respect actually. So that could be happening. But even if they do look up the value of their titles on Amazon, they're looking up the value as of the time those books were on the shelf. Now, I want you to think about this for a second. You've got a book that's ranked 3 million, okay? So that means a buyer is coming along, roughly every couple months, we'll just say. Okay, so that's on Amazon. Now, that's a couple of months for the entire country. Okay, so that's one person every 2 months in the entire country that wants this book. You think about that, it's kind of crazy. That's actually, like, selling one copy every 2 months doesn't sound that bad. When you think about it, like, there's only a country of like over 300 million people, only one person in the entire country wants that book every 3 months. I'd be pretty offended if I was an author. But the point is, I want you to think about what that means for a bookstore. If one person in the whole country is buying that book on Amazon every 2 months, that same book on the shelf of a local bookstore, what are the odds that the perfect buyer for that book is going to come through that door more than once a year or even every few years? Now, a lot of impulse purchases happen at bookstores. Like, you buy things you wouldn't buy online, and like that definitely happens, right? But the point is, these books can sit on the shelves for years. And so a book may have been, this is what I expect happened with the Anarchist Cookbook. I expect the value was probably $30 at the time it went on the shelf, and then it just sat there for months, maybe potentially years. I have no idea. And then by the time it sells, by the time you come across it, the value has gone way, way, way up. So this is really where a lot of the money is made, sourcing from used bookstores, is you're capitalizing on the difference between what the book was worth when it went on the shelf and what it's worth on Amazon now, which could potentially be years after it went on the shelf. That is where we have tons of room to profit. And of course, we have room to profit with those bookstores that don't look up Amazon prices at all. Now, this is the fourth lesson when it comes to sourcing books from used bookstores, which is you have to pay more to make more. So when I'm at a used bookstore, I am not going for the bargain bins at all. I mean, if I do, it's like a last resort. I'm going in with a little bit of money to burn, a little money to invest, and I'm going in preparing to spend $10, sometimes $20, $30 per book, sometimes more. I bought like rare books like out of cases before for like $50+ that I knew I could sell for hundreds on Amazon. And it's not just that you're going to be spending more in general. It's that the more you're willing to spend on a book, the more potential profit you stand to make, the more opportunity for profit you're going to find. So in other words, I'm actually looking for the more expensive books in used bookstores. It's the opposite of the way that I source other places. I'm looking for the $30, $40, $50 books. And the reason being, it's much more likely to find a book that you can purchase for, let's say $50 and sell for $200 or $150 than it is to find a book selling for $10 that you can sell for $100. In other words, the profits are still the same, but it's like 10 times easier to find the books that you're paying a lot more for, 30 to 130 gap versus 10 to 100, 110. So the more you're willing to spend, the higher the probability that book is actually worth significantly more on Amazon. Okay, so it's kind of like a little bit weird to process, but you're actually looking for the more expensive books at used bookstores. You have to be prepared to spend more. So if you're stuck in the mode, I always call it like the cult of the $1 book. If you're stuck in the cult of the $1 or $2 book, you're gonna have a very difficult time adjusting to a bookstore environment. But once you start to see those price discrepancies between the bookstore prices and Amazon, even if you're paying 10 or 20 bucks, you can come out with significant profits. And lesson number 5, which is, it's like basically the golden rule of book sourcing in general, which is that weird books are best. Like you're looking for the weird stuff. You're not going in looking for the Dr. Phil books, which of course is going to apply to any bookstores. But I just want to really like double down on this point that when you're in a used bookstore, you're looking for the weird, you're looking for the out of print, you're looking for the books potentially that don't have barcodes. Like that's where the money is made. So I would go, like in other words, if I was in a bookstore, I would not go to the business section. If I was at a library book sale, I would go to the business section. That's when I'm paying $1 or $2. If I'm going to use bookstore, I know I'm paying, you know, $7, $8, $10, $20. I'm going for the weirdest possible section. I'm going for like the paranormal section, the conspiracy theory section. I'm going for the counterculture section. You know, it's assuming the bookstores even have their books, you know, categorized to this degree. I'm going for like anything weird. Where the weirdest titles are going to be, that's where I'm going. And that's a rule that especially applies to used bookstores. Here's the used bookstore sourcing profit formula. Okay, so you're looking for the weird. That's what I just talked about. Looking for the weirder, the better. Number 2, you're looking for high-priced titles. Don't go to the bargain bins. Don't even look for the $5 books. Honestly, the $10 books, it's a little hit or miss. Like you're looking for like the actual expensive books if you want to make the most amount of money. And then this is an optional one, but I think this is kind of important. A lot of the money I make in used bookstores is books without barcodes. It's not because bookstores are picked over. There rarely are. Very few booksellers go to bookstores, at least like the small boutique used bookstores. But I find there's a lot of potential for profit and for those big price gaps when with titles that don't have barcodes. In other words, books that are out of print specifically. That's when, like the Anarchist Cookbook that I purchased, right? That did not have a barcode and it was out of print. That edition was out of print. So that's the formula. Now you know, used bookstores are a fantastic source. You guys now have a 4-part mission. Are you ready? Mission number 1, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Hit the button. Do it immediately. I will come to your house and rearrange your furniture if you do not subscribe immediately. Mission number 2, get all the free stuff. famaster.com/free. You can download my free book, Reselling for Rebels, 396 pages, a bunch of other free stuff. Number 3, you need a repricing tool. Let's be honest. I've got the best one out there. It's called NeuroPrice. You get a 14-day free trial and plans start at $17 a month. NeuroPrice.io. Lastly, take what you learned in this video. Don't just look at it as this entertaining thing, even though it wasn't really that entertaining. Look at it as something you're actually going to put into practice. Take what you learned in this video. Go make money with it. Thank you guys so much. This is Peter Valley signing off. See you in the next video.